Welcome back. It has been a busy day of smiles for President Biden. This morning, he got to take a modest victory lap over new economic data that shows the pace of inflation is slowing. And then, as you heard earlier this hour, he got to spike the football as he signed a federal marriage equality bill into law, completing a decade-long journey for him in the White House. Take a listen to some more of his remarks.
Racism, anti-Semitism, homophobia, transphobia, they're all connected. But the antidote to hate is love. This law and the love it defends strike a blow against hate in all its forms. And that's why this law matters to every single American, no matter who you are or who you love. This shouldn't be about conservative or liberal, red or blue. No, this is about realizing the promise of the Declaration of Independence.
All right, let's talk about this and everything else going on in Washington. Joining me now on set is Washington Post congressional reporter Marianna Sotomayor, Symone Sanders-Townsend, the former senior advisor to Vice President Harris, and, of course, the host of Symone on MSNBC, and Republican strategist Jim Dornan. Marianna, Symone, Jim, thank you all for being here. Symone, let's start with you. Obviously, you were at the front end of this success that the Biden administration has had in your capacity with the vice president. This lame duck has been pretty productive for the Biden administration. They clearly have some momentum. What do you put this into context for us? How important was today, and what does it mean for the administration going forward?
Look, I think today was personally important for President Biden and Vice President Harris and a number of the advocates and allies that have fought to see this day. Now, critics will tell you, and I think it's important that we talk about that this bill, if, let's just say, the Supreme Court guts Obergefell, this bill will not necessarily protect people across the country in places and spaces where there are laws on the books that discriminate against LGBTQ plus Americans. But it's an important first step. I think the momentum that we're seeing from the administration here is the culmination of a lot of work that has been done. Behind things that happened months ago, I would even argue a year and a half ago, came to fruition this year, and that gives President Biden momentum going into January, which a time where we should see if he's going to run for president or not. So he's going to be running high going into what many people, myself included, think is a reelection announcement.
Yeah. So, Marianna, when you think about the success of the Biden administration, what they would point to, they have a bipartisan infrastructure plan, all that COVID relief that they've done. Now they have same-sex marriage, at least somewhat codified into law. But when you look at his approval numbers, it's not necessarily translating all these wins. You know, he is hovering in the 40s right now. The most recent poll does show him at around a 46% approval rating that came after the election. It seems like he can't get over that 50% hump. Where's the disconnect between the results and the perception the American people have?
Yeah, you know, I've been thinking about this because you would think that it would correlate in some way, and maybe it will if, the inflation threat kind of starts to go down. A lot of people do blame the administration for the good and the bad in that. But I kind of think about it through the midterms. A lot of these House Democrats in particular didn't necessarily run with Biden. It actually, of those very vulnerable places that I went to, I think it took Susan Wild in Pennsylvania 45 minutes into an event to just mention his name. Same thing with Alyssa Slotkin. However, they would talk about all of these wins. And they would also mention that Biden signed this into law or that he, ran on Build Back Better, which parts of that were implemented, not the full thing that he had campaigned on. So I do think that there must be something with voters who maybe disassociate what Congress is doing as something that maybe Biden is also able to tout as a win. They kind of see it as, oh, well, this is my member of Congress kind of doing this, voting for these things. We should maybe reward them. But that could change as Biden, and if he does run, if he puts that into the forefront, he could tout a lot of different things that will remind the public. Well,
Jim, his success may come to a screeching halt, right? As things turn over and Republicans take control of the House of Representatives, there's going to be gridlock on some level, no matter what. And usually there's some blame put on both parties. But, Republicans seem to be pretty content to prevent any kind of forward momentum for the Biden administration. Is that going to help Biden necessarily because he has a foil now that he didn't have before?
In some ways, I think it will. And I thought that's where Symone was going, is the momentum will carry into January and maybe get some of these things done that there is some bipartisan agreement on. There was on the same-sex marriage bill, obviously, the infrastructure bill. I mean, this is why Joe Biden was elected to the presidency, right? It's because he was a great compromiser. And he was able to talk to Republicans as well as Democrats. So it'll be interesting to see what his agenda is going to be for the next 2 years. Yeah, do I think the Republicans are going to give him a hard time? Absolutely. Let's hope they don't do anything crazy like shut down the government or give him a complete momentum builder going into 2024 like unfortunately our party has in the past.
Yeah.
I didn't go there with like, oh, the bipartisan things he might be able to get done going forward. It's because I do think that this next Congress is going to be quite difficult for this particular White House. The oversight hearings, the investigations, many of them baseless, but Republicans will have power in the House of Representatives, and I think it will be a lot harder than it was a year ago or even 6 months ago to work with the incoming House leadership.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So, we did see a bit of a shakeup in Washington this week as Senator Kyrsten Sinema, who's been somebody that's been willing to work with Republicans and been somewhat of a foil of the Democratic White House. And she was there at the White House today with the signing of the same-sex marriage bill. She has said that she's going to become an independent. Now, she hasn't given her intentions yet for 2024, but she sets up the potential of a three-way race in one of the most competitive states in the country. And I talked to Ruben Gallego yesterday, who's obviously a member of Congress and is flirting with the idea of a run. He tried to convince me that Sinema staying in would actually be better for him if he ran as a Democrat. Take a listen. A lot of the concern from Democrats or people that would like to see this seat at least held by someone that leans Democratic is that a three-way primary may benefit Republicans. How much does that concern you? And talk to me about that.
Not at all, actually. As a matter of fact, if Kyrsten Sinema runs and actually stays in the race, she will help the Democrat win. So I'm very excited for her to stay in the race. I think it'll almost assure the fact that the Senate seat will stay in Democratic hands.
And why is that? Explain to me why.
It's very simple math. The Republicans have not been able to hold a coalition together for quite a while. Democrats have for the last 3 cycles. With a big voting bloc of Latinos that are not going to go anywhere else, and they certainly aren't going to go if there's a Latino member of Congress that's running on the ticket. And at the end of the day, that's what it takes to win, and Sinema doesn't have it.
So, Symone, despite the fact that there has been a lot of math in this show, especially with the Bankman-Fried coverage, I'm not a math major, but I'm struggling to understand his theory here, especially when Mark Kelly, who's pretty popular, only won by about 5 or 6 points. If you take all of those voters and split them up, isn't the Republican the one to benefit in a situation like that?
I think so. What I think Ruben Gallego was saying is in fact that Democratic voters in Arizona are quite disaffected with Senator Kyrsten Sinema. And because it is the Democratic machine that got her elected the first time, given what many people view as her antics and now switching to an independent, the machine would not support her and Democratic voters would go to the actual Democrat in the race. That is a big if. I also think there's people like Greg Stanton, right, the current congressman, former mayor of Phoenix, who I also spoke to a couple days ago, and he said he's weighing getting into the race. So I frankly don't think Kyrsten Sinema is going to run for re-election. I think this is her last stand, and she's going to go off and do something else and not bother herself with the primary. But that's just me.
Well, let's clip this tape and have it for you later.
If you talk to Senator Sinema, she will tell you off the record that she thinks she's been elected because of Republicans. So this is not a surprise to me whatsoever. Now, and if the Republicans nominate somebody crazy like Kari Lake, then I think she's got a very legit shot at winning.
What does Kyrsten Sinema stand for? And I think that is the question. When I worked at the White House, one of the biggest frustrations when talking to senators on the Hill is when the senators don't tell you where they stand. And Kyrsten Sinema is notorious for not knowing where she stands, where her hard lines are. People can be mad at Joe Manchin all they want, but he's very clear about what he believes. Right. People don't know where Kyrsten Sinema stands, and I think that'll be an issue.
Marianna, let's take a deep dive into at least part of Sinema's thinking, and that's the party registration numbers in Arizona, which are pretty revealing. 34%, almost 35% say are Republicans, registered as Republicans. Only 30% are Democrats. Look at that number in the middle. 34.67 are independents. Now, it's one thing to say you're an independent. How you vote actually is a little bit more revealing. People don't wave the flag of the independent party. We don't have conventions for independent party candidates. But does she have an argument that she could build a coalition that hasn't currently been tapped into so specifically?
I mean, she, at least on Capitol Hill, has made herself known as someone that you need to negotiate, and you can't just forget her point of view. She always wants to be in the room. She's been working even like on an immigration bill that is just likely never going to pass. Like, she has been trying to work with Republicans for a long time to make inroads, and it is totally an electoral decision. She just running as a Democrat, likely, and there's been, I think, internal polls, even Stanton put it out there, a hypothetical matchup, where she just completely loses Democratic support. She can even get like 20%. So for her, it makes sense to run as an independent. I think it might be difficult for her on Capitol Hill to get that support from Democrats, but it really is going to be a headache for someone like Majority Leader Schumer and also the DSCC. Are they going to get involved in primaries? That's a really big question. They tend to not. But if there's a Democrat running, are they going to support the incumbent or someone else?
And you've noticed so far all the Democrats in the United States Senate holding their fire. We like Kristen Sinema. We like working with her. They still need her vote for at least 2 years, regardless of what she's going to do. So nobody's going to upset her quite yet. Marianna, Symone, Jim, excellent conversation. Appreciate y'all being here.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.